Hey guys, Aaron Farmer with MySugarFreeJourney.com, and this is the notes from day 11 of our 28-day weight loss challenge. So today we're going to talk about quite a few things. We're going to talk about the difference between hunters and gatherers. We're going to talk about Ancel Keys. We're going to talk about cholesterol. So lots of good information in today's video. So let's get started. So once upon a time, we were either hunters or gatherers. Hunters killed their food or fished it out of the ocean, and our liver evolved to handle the energy from that. If food was in short supply, the liver would convert energy from dietary fat into ketones. Ketones would be burned for fuel by your cell's mitochondria or other organs as the body needed. When food was plentiful, excess energy was converted to cholesterol and stored as fat until it was needed again in times of famine. So that was what our hunter. That's how our bodies adapted to deal with a high fat diet. Hunters did not eat carbs, and they were just fine without them. And that's really the basis of the low carb diet, because any of us can do just fine without carbs. And then there were the gatherers. The gatherers got their food from what they could gather or grow. They were the agriculturalists. Food was scarce. All the glucose from the body was immediately taken up by the liver for energy. If food was abundant, blood sugar would rise, provoking insulin to drive energy into fat cells as storage. And this is really the basis of the vegetarian diets. And honestly, a vegetarian diet can be a perfectly healthy way to eat. If you want to eat all fat or if you want to eat all carb, your liver can pretty much adapt to either one of those situations. The problem is that when we try to combine these two diets and eat them both at the same time, there are two different ways that your liver can convert food to energy. So if you can imagine two roads coming into your liver, and one road is the fat and one road is the carbs, and they come in at the same time, and there's a junction like right before they get to the liver, and I'm simplifying here, of course. So as long as you eat all fat, everything passes through your liver just fine, and your body can function great. If you eat just carbs, everything passes through your liver just fine, and everything is great. The problem is that when you try to eat them both at the same time, there's a traffic jam basically, and that's what causes fat to build up around your liver, and that's what causes all the problems of metabolic disease that we talked about last time. And of course, for most Americans eating the standard American diet, we eat both fat and carbs with every single meal. We eat meat and potatoes. We have a nice dinner with a roll on the side. We have a big juicy hamburger on a bun with French fries. So we're constantly eating meat and carbs at the same time, and it's causing that traffic jam in our liver, which is causing us to pack on the pounds around our midsection. Keep in mind that most foods, with one exception, are either a fat or a carb. So meat, fish, poultry, fat. Grains, roots, potatoes, carbs. Fruits that have fat, like olives, avocados, or coconut, have very little carbs. Nuts have fat and a little carbs, but lots of fiber to offset the effect of the carbs on your body. Milk is a small exception but keep in mind that we didn't drink milk until the advent of agriculture. And so what's the big exception? Sugar. Sugar is both a fat and a carb, or at least your body sees it as both a fat and a carb. It sees so if you're eating sucrose, it's half fructose and half glucose. Your body sees the glucose as a carb and deals with it accordingly, but it sees the fructose as a fat and deals with it accordingly. So every time you eat sugar, you are guaranteeing that traffic jam in your liver. So as heart disease and other health issues began to rise, the race was on for scientists to figure out what exactly was going on. And there were two main stories that were beginning to form. The first came from John Yudkin. He was a British nutritionist and was studying the nature of chronic diseases. He determined that consumption of sucrose correlated with heart disease and other issues. He published his findings in the book Pure, White, and Deadly in 1972. And he followed up with numerous papers detailing how sugar consumption led to heart disease, diabetes, GI disease, eye disease, other inflammatory issues. So he tracked down sugar consumption to a host of chronic diseases that were affecting the nation, and have only gotten worse since 1972. Around the same time, Ancel Keys was studying the same issue. but he was telling the world that it was fat that was causing all these same issues. He issued his famous 7-country study that correlated fat consumption with heart disease, and you probably remember the fallout from that study in low-fat foods and heart-healthy grains. So every time you go to the store and you see low-fat cream cheese, or you see a bread that with heart-healthy whole grains on it, that's Ancel Keys' legacy. He's the one who made that happen. But there were some issues with that study. Number one, he studied 22 countries, but only cherry-picked the 7 that best correlated with his hypothesis. When all the data was considered, the links between fat and heart disease are not correlated well, or even at all. And he didn't include native tribes, like the Inuit, that had diets consisting almost entirely of fat and had almost no instances of heart disease. Number 2, the role of fat in heart disease is complicated because at the time, people who were eating fat were probably also eating trans fats. Trans fats are something that we now know without a shadow of a doubt cause heart trouble. And number 3, at one end of the graph, the low end of the graph, is Italy and Japan. They eat the least amount of dietary fat, but they also eat the least amount of sugar. So is it the absence of fat or the absence of sugar that were causing the reduced rates in heart disease? Ancel Keys didn't bother to tell us. So through a way too complicated series of twists and turns that we're going to talk about in this video, but if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend Gary Taubes' book, Good Calories, Bad Calories. It was a life-changing book for me because once I understood how we got here, and he does an excellent job of describing that process, it really strengthened my resolve to eat low carb, high fat. So Ancel Keys, eventually his story won out. And the U.S. adopted its stance that low-fat diets were healthier for America, and that's when the trouble started. Because we listened, we stopped eating fat, and we started getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And it's only just now that people are trying to figure out what's going on. So the big finding of the day was that eating dietary fat led to increased LDL cholesterol. This is the bad cholesterol. But what no one knew at the time, and we only just recently figured out, is there's actually 2 types of LDL cholesterol. You had the large buoyant LDL, or we'll call it LDL-A, and then you had the small dense LDL. Sometimes it's called LDL-B, and sometimes it's called VLDL. So VLDL is for very low density lipoproteins. So these are so LDL-A, which is the large buoyant types of LDL cholesterol, they float. They don't cause. They float in your blood vessels. They just float along, and everything's fine. They don't cause any cardiovascular issues. They are neutral as far as cardiovascular disease goes. But it's the LDL-B. It's the VLDL that is small and dense, and dense enough to sink, and small enough to actually fit between the blood vessel cells, which lead to the plaque buildup that you see on blood vessel walls. So what happened here is people were having heart attacks, and they were cutting them open to figure out what was going on. They were finding the plaque buildup in their arteries, and they were saying, "What is this?" And they would do a test, and it's cholesterol, and they would say cholesterol is bad, and that's what causes heart disease. And if you stop eating fatty foods, your cholesterol will be low, and you won't have the plaque buildup, and you won't have the heart attacks. Well, what nobody understood was that it's the carbs that were raising the worst type of LDL particles, and it's the carbs and the sugar that were causing the heart attacks. So while it's true that dietary fat will raise LDL, it raises LDL-A, and there's no issues with that. So again, what raises LDL-B? It's the carbs, it's the sugar. That's what raises your LDL-B, and that's what causes the cholesterol that will damage your heart. If you care about your heart, if you care about your cardiovascular disease, just stop eating carbs and stop eating sugar. That's what's causing the damage. And so this is bad because once we started making low-fat everything, all the recipes for our processed foods had to be changed. And once you take the fat out, food tastes horrible. So to make it taste better, you had to add sugar, and you had to usually add grain fillers to fill it out. So these sugars and these grain fillers, that's what drives the weight gain. That's what drove LDL-B, and then the obesity epidemic is off and running. And it's off and running because people were listening to their nation's dietary advice and doing what they thought that they were supposed to do, stop eating fat because that's what your doctor told you to do, and it was exactly precisely the wrong thing to do. So definitely check out Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. I can't recommend that book enough. It's fantastic. All right, I appreciate it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel to make sure you never miss a video. If you want to see the transcript of what I've just talked about, if you're watching this on your computer, there's a link below the video in the information section that'll take you over to the transcript. If you're watching this on your mobile, up in the top right hand corner there's a little circle that'll take you over to the page where you can read it. But please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and please come over and join us for our 28-day challenge. We're like day 11, so people are losing weight and getting healthy. If you'd like to join us in that, we would appreciate it. Thanks again, Aaron Farmer with MySugarFreeJourney.com. Bye-bye.